Good evening and welcome to this Students for Life Action Webcast countdown to keep Planned Parenthood defunded. You are in the right place at the right time, and I want to be the first to officially welcome you to this urgent pro-life online event. And also, I want to be the first to welcome not only you, but we were talking about this backstage before we went live. We have well over 1,000 people participating in this webcast. It could be in the many thousands of people. It was over 1,000 earlier today that were registered, and the numbers have kept climbing. So you clearly are in the right place, the right time for this vital conversation. My name is David Bereit, and I'm honored to be serving as the Master of Ceremonies, your host for our time together on this online event. In my day job, I serve as the executive director of Life Leadership Conference. We are a relatively new, about 1-year-old convening of pro-life leaders, organizations, philanthropists that we are uniting, empowering, and mobilizing the pro-life movement for maximum collective life-saving impact. And that's really what we're aiming to do here tonight. Tonight, the focus of our conversation is an organization that regrettably we all know far too well. That organization is Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood is the single largest abortion and transgender hormone chain in the United States of America. Just a couple of weeks ago, to give you some context, Planned Parenthood released their latest annual report on Good Friday, and they were bragging about record numbers across the board for their deadly enterprise. Here are a few statistics. Last year, Planned Parenthood committed their highest ever number of abortions, 434,440 abortions, up 32,000 from the year before. In all the meanwhile, they were raking in their highest ever annual revenue of $2.1 billion, with a B, billion dollars, of which $832 million came from you and me and the American taxpayers. Now, last year, thanks to your prayers, your efforts, and the entire movement, Planned Parenthood thankfully was defunded through the big, beautiful bill to the tune of $500 million. A lot of that taxpayer funding was stripped away. But the clock is ticking right now on the next temporary federal budget deal. And without it, we are facing a crisis. This is a decisive moment. If no action is taken, if Congress does not act swiftly and decisively, Planned Parenthood could get a huge gift of the restoration of $500+ million in annual taxpayer funding, get this, on July 4th, 2026. Yes, that means it would reverse all of our hard-fought pro-life progress, and it would accelerate the harm of the abortion and transgender industry on America's 250th birthday. That is a national crisis. And this is a real, fast-approaching deadline with dire consequences. So tonight we're going to talk about two strategies that are in play right now. The first of those, which we'll address first, is reconciliation. This is a budget tool in Congress, and this is how the defunding happened last year. But the second tool we're going to also dive into is debarment. And this is the way that a federal agency can actually deem that an entity is completely unqualified to receive federal funds. So these are the two strategies in play, and what happens over these next few weeks is going to determine whether that funding remains blocked or if it comes flooding back in full force. So during our time together tonight on this online event, you're going to discover the latest breaking news about what's really happening and what's at stake behind the headlines. You'll also learn tonight the exact timeline leading up to the July 4th deadline and why these next few weeks are so critical. Tonight, you'll also discover the inside strategy that's being deployed to push for permanent defunding. You'll also learn about simple, immediate actions that you can take starting tonight to help defund the abortion Goliath, and you'll also receive messaging and tools that you can use to mobilize others quickly and effectively. So That is our plan for our time together. And to get us started right, I want to introduce our first two presenters. The first is Kristan Hawkins, president of Students for Life of America, a grassroots army of 1,600 plus groups in all 50 states working tirelessly to keep taxpayer dollars out of the hands of the abortion industry. Shh, don't tell anybody else, but today is also Kristan Hawkins' birthday. And the other speaker you will be hearing from is the United States Senator Josh Hawley of Missouri. And Senator Hawley has been leading the cause of life on so many levels in the U.S. Senate, and he just recently introduced an amendment, the first in this round, to get the defunding job done. So the question I'm going to throw to Kristan and Senator Hawley is, can you please get us up to speed on the latest of what's happening right now in Congress, particularly as it relates to reconciliation? Kristan and Senator Hawley.
Thank you, David. Thank you all for joining us here tonight. We've got a short time where we need to explain the fiscal and the moral crisis that we are paying for. Our tax dollars have been going to Planned Parenthood for decades. Planned Parenthood and big abortion are using our taxpayer healthcare dollars to destroy life. It is cultural insanity to use taxpayer funds to prop up abortion vendors, because pregnancy is not a disease, and it's certainly not a disease cured by abortion. And quite frankly, if your healthcare kills and sterilizes people on purpose, you're doing it wrong. This is just common sense. And yet, most of Planned Parenthood, the nation's largest abortion vendor's money, has been coming through our taxpayer dollars. And this has been happening for decades. Senator Hawley, thank you for joining us here tonight to discuss this critical juncture we are at.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Well, you've been such a leader on Capitol Hill, so it was an honor to get you on to just for a few minutes to take time out of your busy schedule to share with us what's going on. We've been told that it's going to be harder than ever to cut Planned Parenthood out of healthcare spending this time. As we all know, they saw a temporary 1-year defunding of 80% of their taxpayer dollars in last year's big, beautiful bill. But in all my conversations with folks in Washington, we've been told it's not gonna happen. You have made a big attempt in the Senate bill. Where do we currently stand right now? And do you think we can actually get it done before the July 4th deadline, when Planned Parenthood's set to be reinstated to receive hundreds of millions of our taxpayer dollars?
Well, where it stands right now is that if Congress doesn't act before that July 4th deadline that you just mentioned, Planned Parenthood is going to start getting hundreds of millions of dollars a year. And just to put this in perspective, a recent GAO study found that over a 3-year period, one 3-year period, Planned Parenthood got $1.5 billion of taxpayer money. 1.5. And maybe the worst part about it is it came out of the Medicare program and the Medicaid program. And can you imagine any worse use of that money, which is supposed to be for our seniors, for those in need, for folks who are poor, and instead we're spending it on abortions, and by the way, trans procedures as well. Let's not forget, Planned Parenthood also is a huge provider of trans care, so-called, for minor children. I mean, this is outrageous. The fact that Congress has not already banned this funding is indefensible. It is just indefensible. And the only reason it hasn't happened is congressional leaders don't want it to happen. I mean, I'm sorry, but that is just the absolute truth. It could be in this reconciliation bill that is making its way through the Senate right now. In fact, we're going to vote on this bill again next week. I can tell you, I will again offer an amendment to ban Planned Parenthood funding in this bill. And the only reason that's not in the bill is because leaders didn't want it in there. I think they've got a lot of explaining to do.
So this bill that's making its way back to you all in the Senate is what I think they're calling Reconciliation 2.0, or the skinny reconciliation. The original would have been last summer, if you wanted to call that Reconciliation 1.0. I feel like we're talking about software here. But when we were fighting for this last year, we engaged in several district visits, events, lobby days with our Students for Life leaders, a massive calling and email campaign. What do you think will sway members there in the House and in your chamber in the Senate the best to get them to vote and to
Thank you,
move to
David.
action? What do you advise our grassroots to tell their elected leaders?
Same thing. I mean, I think it's absolutely vital that you tell your elected leaders that they're under no circumstance is it acceptable to fund Planned Parenthood or any other abortion provider or any other trans provider, period. There shouldn't be any excuses about this. There shouldn't be any equivocation. And frankly, I think that you shouldn't accept no for an answer. I mean, we've got to get to yes. And I think the only thing that our elected representatives at the end of the day really care about is votes. And I tell you what, who provides the backbone of the Republican coalition for Congress? It is pro-life voters. And I think it's time we reminded members of Congress of that. Who got them where they are? It is pro-life voters in every district and every state in America, and they need to hear that.
That's absolutely right. I mean, a Signal poll from this winter found that a third of Republicans say that they would be less likely to vote in the midterms if they believe the Republican Party, the GOP, has abandoned the abortion issue. And so I think this is critical for all Republicans in Washington, because there's been a number of articles. There was an article out today talking about how we as pro-life organizations and as the pro-life movement are concerned that the White House and the administration and Congress is not hearing us. And when you look at some of these midterm elections, they are going to be extremely close. You need to turn out every single committed pro-life voter to this election, because I think it's pretty clear what we're going to face if Democrats win the majority in Congress. I mean, they've made no qualms about their goal of stacking the Supreme Court, eliminating the filibuster to stack the Supreme Court. They've already attempted to pass in the past bills that would legalize abortion up until the moment of birth with taxpayer funds, no questions asked. I mean, that's literally what we face on the other side. And so I think, when we're asking Congress to do the right thing, to renew the defunding measure on Planned Parenthood and big abortion, not only is it in the best interest of the 432,000 babies Planned Parenthood is killing a year, and the 432,000 women and families they are maiming and harming, but it's in the best interest of the Republican Party themselves. And so I think it's insanity when we hear things like, this is just going to be a reconciliation bill just on this issue, but don't worry, we'll get you later. We'll get you on the back end of this. What do you think is reasonable? Have you seen any conversation about this reconciliation? Now they're calling it 3.0. Any conversations moving forward on that? I've heard folks say, well, we potentially might get another reconciliation bill, but it might not be until November or right before the election, which I think sounds improbable at this moment, because I have a feeling many people are going to be out campaigning for their jobs.
Yeah, I have a hard time believing that there's going to be another reconciliation bill. I certainly can't imagine there will be one before July the 4th. And once again, it is on July the 4th that all of that money, taxpayer money, your money, starts going to Planned Parenthood and other abortion providers. And it is just a travesty that a Republican Congress would allow this to happen. And I think the Congress has gotten into a very bad habit of sitting back and telling other people what they ought to do, telling voters what they should do, telling the White House what it ought to do, telling this agency, that agency. This is Congress's job. The only people who can control funding are Congress. They need to act. And I think, once again, there's no excuse here. We need to not accept no for an answer. We need to make the moral case that Planned Parenthood and other abortion and trans providers must be defunded.
That's right. I think you're exactly right, because I just in the past couple of weeks, we've seen a number of news articles out there about, well, the White House and Congress hasn't failed to act. It's the pro-life movement that has failed to convince Americans that abortion is wrong. When you look at the numbers of abortion in the 1980s, there were over 1 million more abortions happening a year. So we are saving at least 1 million children every year because of the pro-life movement. We did something that most people said that was, quite frankly, that told me when we started Students for Life was impossible, seeing the reversal of Roe versus Wade. I was then told seeing Planned Parenthood ever defunded because they were too deep in Democrats' pockets. That was impossible. We continue to do the impossible. And so I think you have some great words of wisdom for everyone tuning in tonight. Don't take no for an answer. Continue to call your members of Congress, your House Representative member, your 2 senators, demanding that in any any and all funding bill on Capitol Hill, we see a defunding measure of Planned Parenthood and big abortion, the largest vendor. I mean, the fact that they release on Good Friday, their annual report bragging that they had killed more babies than ever before in the previous year. I mean, I can't think of another way for them just to put, just poke us in the eye and brag about this behemoth, this abortion Goliath that's operating under our nose every single day in our communities and our states and continues to kill babies and is now the leading provider of abortions and wrong sex sterilizing hormones treatment. We know we've made an impact, guys. I mean, there was an article a couple weeks ago saying how Planned Parenthood is moving to Botox injections to make up some of their lost funding from this past year. So we know defunding last year made an impact, but they're just treading water and waiting for July 4th for that spigot of our taxpayer funds to come in and come back on, and we must stop this. So thank you so much, Senator, for giving us your time tonight and for all of your leadership on Capitol Hill. We look forward to standing with you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. Thank you for everything you're doing for life.
All right, I'm going to turn it back over to David.
Ooh, Kristan, if that don't light your fire, then your wood is wet. Thank you so very much to you for your always keeping this issue at the forefront. And also thank you so much, Senator Hawley, for your leadership in our United States Senate. So next up, we have two additional guests because it's clear that we need to act now, not only about the money, but also the fact that we are dealing with a predatory abortion industry led by Planned Parenthood, wanting us to use our taxpayer money to fund them while they're destroying innocent preborn children's lives and harming women. And so we have two special guests who are going to help us understand just how much Planned Parenthood and the abortion industry hurts everyone touched by it. The first guest we're going to be hearing from is Dr. Catherine Wheeler. You see her there at the bottom of the screen on the right side. And she is a former abortion provider who today is with APLOG, the American Association of Pro-Life OBGYNs. Say that 3 times fast. And then we'll be hearing from Tony McFadden. Tony's a pro-life advocate, international speaker, and author of Redeemed: My Journey After Abortion. So let me start, Dr. Wheeler, with you. Abortion is the diametric opposite of healthcare. What do we know about how abortion really harms women from a medical perspective?
Thank you, David. And first, happy birthday, Kristan. What a great way to spend a birthday. Well, abortion is deceptively sold to the unsuspecting public as normal, essential health care, as safe, as necessary for women to fully participate in society. None of this is true. Abortion is not health care. We tend to think of abortion as ending a pregnancy, and certainly all pregnancies end. But the CDC definition of abortion for surveillance is an intervention to end a pregnancy that does not result in live birth. In other words, the baby must be dead. As an unnatural intervention, of course, women also risk harm from abortion, which exponentially increases with gestational age. In fact, death from abortion increases 38% each week after about 8 weeks. And by 18 weeks is about twice the risk of dying from vaginal childbirth. And yes, abortion is available through the entire pregnancy in 9 states, most often performed on healthy babies and healthy moms. There are 2 ways basically to do abortions: drugs and surgery. About 70% of abortions now in the United States are done with drugs. Immediate and short-term harms of first trimester drug-induced abortion are 4 times the risk of surgical abortion, meaning 1 in 5 women are going to suffer a complication, with 15% experiencing hemorrhage, over 6% requiring surgery. And these drugs are also associated with severe infections, sepsis, and death. A recent large analysis of insurance data found that in real use, nearly 1 in 9 women undergoing drug-induced abortion will have a serious adverse event like hemorrhage, infection, transfusion, hospital admission, and unplanned surgery. And many abortion providers actually prescribe them beyond the 10 weeks approved by the FDA. So by the 2nd trimester, more than 1 in 3 women who use these drugs will have a complication. Harms have only worsened since the FDA removed safeguards, or REMS. Women, or actually anybody, can obtain the drugs online with no interaction or evaluation by a medical professional. There's no confirmation of gestational age. There's no exclusion of ectopic pregnancy, which is life-threatening. She has no medical professional that she can call when she has complications, and that delays emergency care and worsens outcomes. These women are abandoned by the abortion provider. Prescribing drugs with no evaluation is not health care. Dr. Christina Francis recently documented obtaining the drugs within minutes online as a presumed 13-year-old with multiple contraindications. And additionally, perpetrators and partners have forced and coerced abortion drugs that they obtained online. This is drug dealing, not healthcare. Now, surgical abortion procedures and risks, of course, depend on the size of the baby and the size of the uterus, and those risks also rapidly increase. The woman's cervix must be dilated to permit introduction of instruments to remove the baby and placenta. And after 24 weeks, these are multi-day procedures, often ending in an instrument delivery. So harms of these surgical procedures include hemorrhage, infection, instruments perforating the uterus and damaging other organs like the bowel or bladder, incomplete abortion, additional surgery, damage to the cervix or uterus, and death. In last year here in Colorado, where I am, there's no regulation, oversight, or inspection of these facilities. And an 18-year-old woman died from an abortion at 22 weeks at a Planned Parenthood facility. Long-term risks we usually ignore, but abortion increases risk to future pregnancy for preterm births, for an abnormal attachment of the placenta called placenta accreta spectrum, which can cause massive hemorrhage. And some women, unfortunately, are never able to carry a baby to viability. It also negatively affects mental health. A recent 17-year study in Canada found that compared to childbearing, a woman has 2.4 times the risk, if she had an abortion, of being hospitalized for mental health, for suicide attempt, and for substance use disorder. And that, of course, is just the tip of the iceberg. Women who've had abortions also have 2 to 4 times higher mortality rates compared to women who have children, from 180 days after all the way out to 25 years. So huge impact on women's health. And I'll end by saying Planned Parenthood and the American College of OBGYN are the primary voices creating confusion and misinformation to promote unrestricted abortion access while denying harms to women. And so to dispel just a couple of those facts, number one, it's legal in every state to intervene in a pregnancy in the very rare event it's necessary to save a woman's life. Secondly, it's legal in every state to provide medical care for women experiencing ectopic pregnancy or miscarriages. Third, women do not need abortion to participate in a just society. They need accommodations, support, and resources, and good medical care. And fourth, abortion ends the life of a preborn baby and harms women. Abortion is not health care.
Wow, Dr. Wheeler, thank you for laying out the undisputable case that abortion is not health care and also all the risks. One of the reasons that we felt it was absolutely important to have Dr. Wheeler here this evening is because national polls have shown multiple times that when it comes to the American public and what voices they trust when it comes to the issue of abortion, the medical voice is one of the top 2 voices, in fact, the number 1 voice, medical doctors, that they turn to. And Dr. Wheeler, I thank you for not only sharing your voice, but also the fact that you were on the other side of this issue, had a change of heart and a conviction that has you now speaking out for life. And for the person watching us right now or listening to us right now, take this information that you have and share it with others. Send other people this video so they can hear, not from me, not from advocates like Kristan Hawkins, but instead from a medical doctor who once was on the other side of the issue and now is here advocating of the harm that is being done by Planned Parenthood, by the abortion pill, by the abortion industry. And that voice will carry tremendous weight beyond what many of us can carry. The second voice that is also critical to be able to shape the opinion of the general public is those with lived experience. So it's the medical voices and those who have had lived experience with these issues. And that brings us to the other presenter in the segment, Tony McFadden. And Tony, you have been so courageous sharing your testimony, your story about an abortion experience. Can you tell us a little more and explain from your vantage point now, as you understand this, how women are targeted, and in the work you do today, what do the women you counsel say about their abortion experience?
Thank you so much, David, for having me, and happy birthday to Kristin as well. It's always an honor to be able to share from this perspective, although not always easy to do. But yes, I was a senior in high school when I was given the chemical abortion pills. And looking back, one of the hardest parts is realizing how little I truly understood what was happening to me and to obviously my innocent baby. I was young, I was scared, and I was vulnerable, which I think is where the abortion industry really targets women, because they approach them in their most fearful and vulnerable moment. And abortion is presented as this simple, that it's quick and it's normal and it's empowering. And I will tell you, as someone who has experienced abortion, there's nothing empowering about taking the life of your own, because it changes you. And so with the abortion pill especially, women are often told it's just going to be like a heavy period, and that's what I was told. And that's not really what happens. I know for myself, my pills actually didn't work. Now, this is coming from someone who went into the abortion clinic, got the pills from an abortionist, and I still had complications. So the fact that young women are able to get this online is just horrific. It just shows you that they don't really truly care about women. And what happened for me is my pills didn't work, and I ended up hemorrhaging almost a month later while I was in school. And again, as I mentioned before, I didn't know what was happening to me. I wasn't prepared for the physical, for the emotional part of this. And a lot of women like myself feel like they feel rushed, that they felt like abortion was presented as a responsible option, the most realistic option. And whether they feel pressured by a boyfriend or a parent or finances, and instead of someone slowing them down, which is why I appreciate pregnancy resource centers so much, because they step into this girl's crisis and they're able to slow that process down. And so for myself, I ended up, as I said, hemorrhaging, but I didn't go to the hospital. By the grace of God, I didn't pass away. That there's been women who have passed away from having complications like this. And I kind of stuffed it down to try to pretend it didn't happen. And I had the mental health and the regret of my abortion, but I wasn't talking about it to anyone, which is why I do what I do now. Because I have sat across from women who may not have had the same physical complications as me, but they all have the regret.
Yeah.
And one of the two things the difference I've seen is when I've counseled women who have kept their babies, I've never heard them say, "Oh, I wish I could go back and have an abortion." I've only heard women who have similar stories as mine say, "I wish I could go back and give my baby life knowing what I know now." And so this is why I am very open about my own experience, because I want women who have been in my place to know the truth. And I also want them to know that healing and forgiveness is possible.
Toni, thank you for your willingness to share from your experience, real lived experience, which nobody can argue with. This isn't a debate about, tactics or ideas. It's an experience that you've lived, and you're able to now help other people avoid some of the challenges and the mistakes and the things that you went through. And I thank you for that. And I hope for the person right now watching and who's saying, what am I supposed to do here? Understand that there are people at risk from Planned Parenthood and the abortion industry that are not healthcare. There are people just like Toni who are being exploited by an industry that preys, P-R-E-Y, preys upon vulnerable people in a time of need. And each of us need to be a voice for those who, in these circumstances, have no other voice. And from the bottom of my heart, Dr. Wheeler, Toni, I want to thank you for being here, for sharing your experiences and your perspectives, and know that it's going to help all of us as we press forward in this fight, as we count down to keep Planned Parenthood defunded. Thank you very much for your time here this evening. All right. Well, next up, we are going to now shift the gear. We are going to hear from two women. We are hearing from a lot of women tonight. I love it. And these are women who really understand the kind of money that Planned Parenthood is wasting. Here they are wanting more than $500 million of our taxpayer funding restored here on July the 4th, on the 250th anniversary of our nation's birth. And Planned Parenthood is squandering this money. And also we're going to learn how they are pivoting their business model to cash in every possible way they can. And so the two presenters we're going to be hearing from, first, in the bottom right, we're going to hear from former U.S. Representative Marilyn Musgrave, who now serves as Vice President of Government Affairs for Susan B. Anthony Pro-Life America. We crossed paths very briefly last week at the Susan B. Anthony Pro-Life America Gala in Washington, D.C. And then on my top right, you will next hear from Melanie Israel. Melanie is a visiting fellow for the Richard and Helen DeVos Center for Life, Religion, and Family at the Heritage Foundation, an amazing organization. And she is an expert on how Planned Parenthood conducts their gruesome business. So, Marilyn, the first question I'm going to send to you, from your time in Congress to the work at Susan B. Anthony Pro-Life America, you have seen Planned Parenthood's unbelievable lobbying tricks and tactics, both in office and since then. How do they get so much of our money?
Well, they're very good at masquerading. They present themselves as an organization that provides comprehensive health care for women. And invariably, David, they will talk about how they serve poor women and women in rural areas. And they talk about the services they provide: STD testing, contraception, cancer screening, and prevention. They talk about all these services they provide. But what they really do is perform abortions. That's where they really make their money. And in their own annual report, we see that these other services are declining while the abortion numbers are rising. And in 2023 and 2024, a record number of abortions, 434,000 plus abortions performed. And I tell you, when a pregnant woman goes into a Planned Parenthood facility, 97% of them have abortions. Do they get adoption referrals? Do they get prenatal care? Very rarely what they get is an abortion. And Planned Parenthood has been very successful at portraying this image. They even portray that they provide mammograms for women. There's never been a mammogram performed in a Planned Parenthood facility. They're not licensed to do it, and they don't even have the equipment. So that's the image that they provide. They have constantly come against any regulation, that even regulations of the facilities that would improve services for women. They oppose anything that would hinder their abortion business in any way. Last summer, we were so encouraged with the leadership of Speaker Johnson and Leader Thune when they were able to defund Planned Parenthood for 1 year. It made history. And David, that is now an expectation of the pro-life movement, defunding Planned Parenthood. And I can tell you, taxpayer dollars should never go to Planned Parenthood. They exploit women. And Tony, your remarks touched my heart so much as I've talked to other women, and they exploit women, they peddle lies, and they are responsible for making profit off of killing hundreds of thousands of unborn children. They do not deserve our taxpayer dollars.
Marilyn, thank you for helping us to understand what's at stake here. When you said that number, I just typed it into the calculator on my phone. The 434,450 abortions last year divided by 365 days of the year. Every single day, Planned Parenthood kills 1,190 children. Think about in your neighborhood. Think about in your children's schools. Think about in your church. Think about ripping out 1,190 lives from your community and the devastation that would have. And yet that is 1 day of Planned Parenthood's business funded by our taxpayer dollars. It is absolutely beyond time for us to say no more. I was so thankful last year, right before the vote on the big, beautiful bill, when Speaker Johnson came to the Students for Life Action, the Celebrate Life weekend, and was speaking there. And I got to talk to him personally and thank him for his leadership. And of course, Senator Thune for his leadership in the U.S. Senate. We cannot allow this to fall away this year. We proved last year that it can be done. We proved that the whole fabric of society did not fall apart. In fact, our nation is better for this fact that we defunded Planned Parenthood. It's important for each of us to understand 1,190 children and 1,190 moms are depending upon us to strip away Planned Parenthood's taxpayer funding for this next year. And next up, Melanie Israel. Melanie, so many of us have valued you, your work at Heritage Foundation, as you've been detailing the destruction caused in particular by abortion pills. This is the new delivery mechanism, 63% several years ago. Now, I was just in Iowa, 90% of abortions delivered through these chemical means, this dangerous concoction. You just came out with a report called Abortion Pills, Coercion and Abuse. Does it shock you that the federal government allows the abortion industry to side with abusers and sex traffickers? And from your vantage point, how are office holders responding to the dark side of the abortion industry that you illuminate and you write about?
Yes, great question. Unfortunately, this project, we're collecting these publicly available stories about women who have been coerced, abused, forced into having an abortion without their knowledge or consent. And unfortunately, I have to add to it every time one of these cases comes up in the news. And these are merely the tip of the iceberg. It's not an exhaustive list. We have no way to really know exactly how often this happens. But importantly, these are real people with real stories and real experiences, and it doesn't have to be this way. So what's going on is we have this convergence of two really important federal policy hooks. You've got FDA regulation of abortion drugs, or lack thereof, and then federal funding for big abortion providers. We, the taxpayers, are propping up their business, and their business enables abusers, traffickers, unsupportive parents, husbands, boyfriends. It enables them to hurt people. And it's because these pills can be purchased online by anyone with a credit card. They can be purchased or obtained by somebody and stockpiled, resold later. They can be obtained by telehealth, which is really just a person clicking the right boxes and an abortionist approves a prescription. So none of that is healthcare. That's just big abortion making a profit. And unfortunately, under the current regulatory environment, it's perfectly legal for them to be doing these online telehealth abortions. And so states they have increased things like penalties when there's these cases of abuse and coercion. Pro-life states have been doing everything they can to try to protect women, girls, unborn children from these dangerous pills. But unfortunately, states can only do so much when they're being shipped through the mail from pro-abortion states into pro-life states. And big abortion, Planned Parenthood, these online pharmacies, they are protected by blue states. They're passing things like shield laws that protect the abortionists. They prohibit state-to-state cooperation, even in those cases of coercion and abuse. We've had young girls forced to have an abortion that she didn't want by her mother. The doctor in New York who sent those pills down to the mother is not going to be held accountable. These pro-life states are trying with the tools that they have to protect people, but it really illustrates why that state's only strategy can only do so much. And so we have to have federal engagement too. And of course, addressing dangerous abortion drugs, that's something that all of us here, and I know everybody in Students for Life, is working very hard on. But in the meantime, we should not be sending nearly $1 billion every year to the very people who are profiting from abortion drug recklessness. And so if anybody is going to, take away anything from this discussion here, I really, really want to highlight that defunding big abortion is going to be a big win for everyone who cares about health and safety. And so I am so grateful to Students for Life, for everybody here on this call who's standing, shoulder to shoulder in that fight.
Melanie, thank you for leading on that fight and for being such a courageous voice on the dangers of the abortion pill. We've seen the insurance claims data that have shown how devastatingly harmful the abortion pill is. We have seen, as Kristi Hamrick, who we're going to be hearing from next, and others have revealed, the dangers of the abortion pill going into our water and waste stream and the consequences of that. And who's the leading perpetrator as these pills are being mailed across states, and even in states like Louisiana, challenging the federal government and initially getting a temporary stay, preventing the mailing of these drugs, and the Supreme Court debating that issue right now. The leading perpetrator is Planned Parenthood. And if we want to stop this dangerous dispensing of this deadly chemical concoction, we have to strip away taxpayer funding and then do everything else we can to take away the other revenue streams from Planned Parenthood. So Melanie, thank you. Thank you, Marilyn, for helping us to understand what's at stake. And now we're going to shift to one last means that we have to be able to work to strip away Planned Parenthood's funding, not just for a year, not even just for 10 years, but for a long period of time. And Planned Parenthood has been insidious in infiltrating government programs. And our next guest, who I just referenced, Kristi Hamrick, has a brilliant idea for being able to cut them out long term. Kristi serves as Vice President of Media and Policy for Students for Life Action. And Kristi, you advocate for a process that before you started talking about it, I'd heard of it, I didn't understand it, but you've really educated me and many other people. The process is called debarment. And I know when we talk about government and money, it gets really convoluted really quickly. Students for Life has been talking about debarment since the first Trump administration, and finally people are listening. It was announced this year, the Small Business Administration took action against Planned Parenthood. So can you explain debarment, the significance of what's happening, and where we need to go to make sure that Planned Parenthood is no longer qualified to receive any federal funding?
Yeah, qualified is really the key word, David. And I have to say first, thank you to this great cloud of witnesses that I am so proud to share this virtual stage with. I'm the kind of nerd that loved lit and mythology classes, and I'm with a bunch of Valkyrie here who are fighting for life. So I could not be more proud. But when it comes to debarment, what's interesting about it is we've all come to know DOGE, and they're looking at bad actors and bad vendors for the federal government. Debarment is just the process of, let's say, a long overdue job review in which a federal vendor, any federal vendor, can be investigated after complaints about their so-called service are offered. It's not unusual. And in fact, one of my favorite letters is from the unexpected Senator Elizabeth Warren, who wrote Joe Biden during his administration that he should be doing more with debarment. He should be looking at more federal vendors to say, why are you not doing exactly what we want? So we have Planned Parenthood, who's a federal vendor to the tune of billions of dollars over many years, who's accused of ignoring sex trafficking, Medicare and Medicaid fraud, operating a racist work environment through more than 250 lawsuits. They're accused of using paycheck protection funds inappropriately. So we've got financial alleged fraud under reporting laws for people who are being sex trafficked, fraud related to a number of other things. So they're a bad actor, allegedly. They should be investigated. So debarment is a process for reviewing a vendor to say, are you providing this service you're supposed to provide? Because that moves you from a qualified vendor. And in multiple court cases, Planned Parenthood stands up with a straight face and says, you can't defund us. We're qualified. We fill paperwork out real good, as though that's the nature of what gets federal dollars, your ability to fill out paperwork. So in debarment, you're investigated for whether you are a good actor, whether you're providing the service you're supposed to be providing. And if not, you can be debarred and delisted, cut off, not just from Medicaid, which is what reconciliation is looking at, but from everything. Title X family planning funds. Do you know that get money for sex education? They even got money to talk to people about things like vaccinations or COVID or the viruses, the West Nile virus. I mean, these guys, if there's a pocket of money out there, they want their hand in it. It's astounding. If they're an unqualified vendor, if they're found to be a bad actor, not only can they not get money from Medicaid, they can't get money from anyone. It's the Small Business Administration is looking at them because of paycheck protection fraud. Senator Joni Ernst and Senator Rand Paul sent a letter. Students for Life sent a letter. In fact, on this call, more than 40 groups joined us in a letter to the Small Business Administration saying Planned Parenthood needs to be investigated. They need to be disqualified. This is an all of the above strategy. You should use reconciliation to say you can't have healthcare dollars to kill people and to sterilize young, confused children. You should not get healthcare dollars for that. That's step one. Step two is you shouldn't have any money at all because of the way in which you do business, in the way in which you've been, Texas still has lawsuits related to all kinds of funding issues. Often the government defunds and debars based on your failure, your financial fraud. That's not a shock. But the number of complaints against Planned Parenthood are legion. And so we're just saying all of the above. Small Business Administration, Trump administration, fast-track debarment. They're a bad actor. Their job review needs to come up eligible to be fired, and use reconciliation to say our healthcare dollars need to go to people who know that every patient should survive a meeting. If your healthcare kills people on purpose, if your healthcare sterilizes young people on purpose, you're doing it wrong. That's not healthcare. So there's a number of reasons to think that Planned Parenthood need to be fired. And if they want to transition to Botox, as they're doing in California, best of luck. Don't let the door hit you on the way out.
Kristi, let me ask you this. We heard Senator Hawley talk about the reconciliation process and whether it's the skinny bill and 2.0 and 3.0. And I know for the average American, we're like, what does all this mean? And sometimes when we hear that, and Senator Hawley's saying we need to call Congress and we need to tell them, defund Planned Parenthood through reconciliation, what can we specifically do related to debarment, and what is the role of Congress? Is that where we need to put the pressure on Congress and the administration? And do we feel that that's the path towards being able to do, it's not an either or, it's a both and, as you said?
That's right. It's a both and. The call to Senator Thune, the majority leader in the Senate, and to Speaker Johnson in the House is to use reconciliation to cut Planned Parenthood out of Medicaid before July 4th. Otherwise, Planned Parenthood gets a present on America's 250th birthday. That's step one. But Congress needs to pressure President Trump to fast-track debarment. It is in the hands of President Trump and his administration through the Solicitor General's office, whether it is at HHS or at the SBA, Small Business Administration, to do this job review. So the president can act on that with or without Congress doing reconciliation. We're saying both and. Congress, use reconciliation to cut Planned Parenthood out of our healthcare spending, and ask President Trump and the Small Business Administration to fast track this job review so that Planned Parenthood can be fired. If anybody thinks that Planned Parenthood's worth the money, you show us your case, we'll show you ours, because the track record is very extensive. And as all these extraordinary women have illustrated, and as Senator Hawley has discussed, Planned Parenthood is not worthy of our funds.
Amen. Kristi, thank you so much. And I hope for the person listening, you understand how important it is that it's the both and. We are aiming for what can address this short term, but also address this long term. And even to recognize, Senator Hawley mentioned this earlier, this is what we all voted for a pro-life president for pro-life majorities in the U.S. House and in the Senate, and having a pro-life majority on the U.S. Supreme Court. This is why. It's so that we can work to protect women, protect children, and strip away taxpayer funding from the perpetrators of this great evil. There are so many reasons to cut Planned Parenthood from our federal budget, and we've heard tonight about these two great options, reconciliation and debarment. Abortion will always be a federal issue if our tax dollars continue to support those who are profiting from the killing of children in the womb and the harming of their mothers. And you tonight can make a difference. I'm going to try to take everything we've heard from this amazing panel of experts tonight, and I'm going to simplify it down to what you can do right now to make a difference. So down below this video where you're watching us at this very moment, and I've got it pulled up at this exact moment as we're live here on Tuesday, May the 12th at 8:49 p.m. Eastern, down below the video, it says demand action from Washington. If you're watching the replay afterwards, it should still be there right below the video. Tell President Trump, Speaker Johnson, and Leader Thune to keep Planned Parenthood defunded. And there's a button that says take action now. I want you to click that button and it will open a new tab. You'll still hear my voice. It'll open a new tab. You'll still be able to hear. It'll take you to a page. Tell President Trump, House Speaker Johnson, and Senator Majority Leader Thune to defund Planned Parenthood. And it actually goes down and it talks about the two different ways: debarment, budget reconciliation. You fill in your information and you send that now. Your message gets delivered right to the President's office, Speaker Johnson's office, Senator Thune's office, and you have the opportunity to communicate this message we've heard tonight in a crystal clear way that will get their attention. I've been talking to people on Capitol Hill and they tell me right now we need to make a whole lot of noise. And so what I'm going to encourage you is not only before this time together this evening is done, not only take that action yourself, think of 5, 10, 15 friends that you know who care as deeply as you do about protecting women, about protecting children, about protecting minors from sex hormones that completely ruin their lives. You tell them we have an opportunity right now to tell the leaders in Congress and in the White House to defund Planned Parenthood, make sure that this continues not only this 1 year through reconciliation, but through this debarment process. Encourage everybody you possibly know, make noise now, louder than ever before. If all you did tonight was come here and you go, that was a nice event, those people had nice things to say, and you don't take action, I'm sorry, we failed you. But if you are willing to take this action right now, fill out that form and then send it to 5, 10, 15 or more friends. Send it to every listserv, pro-life group, social media, post it everywhere, and let people know we need to take action to keep Planned Parenthood defunded. The clock is ticking. We have from tonight, May the 12th, until July the 4th, before Planned Parenthood, as Kristi said, gets this massive gift of a restoration of more than $500 million of taxpayer funding. You have the opportunity tonight, tomorrow, to take swift action that can help to stop this and prevent that flood of taxpayer dollars. Please, from the bottom of my heart, I implore you, I beg you, take this action, invite others to do it as well. We need to keep Planned Parenthood defunded. From the bottom of my heart, thank you to each of our presenters tonight for sharing their testimonies, their experience, their knowledge, their perspectives, and most importantly, thank you for your willingness to stand up for those who have no other voice, for mothers, for children, and for pregnancy centers and other places that serve them. You have an opportunity to take action right now. The button is right below. Fill out the form and do it. Share it with others, and you truly can make a life-saving impact, in one that years from now you'll be able to tell your children and your grandchildren. At that moment, when Congress was on the verge of allowing Planned Parenthood to restore that funding, I and the pro-life movement took swift action, and we spoke with one unified voice that was heard throughout the halls of Congress. It was heard throughout the White House, and they took the courageous, necessary action to ensure that Planned Parenthood's funding was not restored. You can say I was there and I helped to lead that charge. Thank you for your action. Thank you for being a part of this webcast tonight. May God bless you, and may God bless our unified efforts to keep Planned Parenthood defunded. Thank you so much for joining us. Good night. God bless you.